Was using a therapist even deemed as a solution back then? Because
no,
it was not. Like, I never heard of the word go and sit and talk to a psychiatrist and help you deal with mental health. Never. Therapy, not even an option. No, as Black men, I always look at like the perspective of, especially when you reach a level of awareness of how tough the world is for us as Black men, what we have to deal with. We have to work twice as hard to get half the credit.
And I think as the continent also speeds up its development, right? We're exposed to so much information, which I don't think humans are naturally designed for.
Yeah.
And all that information overload then conversely leads to mental health issues, right? I know in Uganda right now, it was never, like when I was growing up, we didn't talk about it. Coming to you live from the illustrious Linwood, Washington.
Oh, we're disclosing the location.
I mean, they don't know where.
Fair enough.
They don't know where. We can keep that one on the lot. The boys are back.
Come on.
TJMTM is back. What is this, episode 5?
Yeah, episode 5, season 4.
It's been this season's been fun.
Yeah, boys are flying. You know, we've been having last few seasons of consistency and you know, taking breaks. So this season, I don't know, no complaints so far.
No complaints, because the boys have been very, very, I'd say very consistent.
Yeah. We told y'all though, you know, we told them, but you know.
For those of y'all who don't know, we're the Jola Meets the Madi podcast. What we're about is we're just two young African millennials just canoeing through this thing called life and talking about our everyday life experiences. Yeah, checking in, bro. Go on. How you been?
Man, we out here. Want to give shout out to Tiwa Savage for that content.
Shout out Tiwa.
Yeah.
When I start talking about Tiwa, bro, let me behave. But
the queen and Tiwa Savage, you know, noticed someone in the crowd and was kind enough, you know, to extend an arm. So,
not once.
Not once.
But
twice. Come on.
So Tiwa, if you're watching this, you already know.
The one and only answer, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a great show. So, you know, I'm glad the Afrobeats artists are coming to Seattle finally.
They're coming in numbers too. Well, we got Joe Boy tonight. Tiwa came. Fireboy came.
Yeah.
We had Rema coming.
Rema's coming?
He's in August. Adekunle Gold's coming in July.
Dang.
Yeah, Seattle's... It's a hot boy summer for sure. Hoochie short summer. So y'all get your hoochie shorts ready. We're doing that all summer.
Come on.
But today we wanted to touch on something that is kind of, I wouldn't say taboo, but it's ignored in our communities, right? And that's mental health, right?
Yeah.
So E-Boy and I here, I'd like to say we're pretty big advocates for just taking care of your mental, right? Or like Marshawn would say, take care of your chicken.
Yeah.
Take care of your because that's really all you have at the end of the day. And why do you think in our communities mental health is so mismanaged? Like, why is it not, I guess, at the forefront of a lot of discussions?
Wow, yeah. I mean, you're so right. It's so important. And it's, you know, so many times we just sweep it under the rug or it's ignored. You know, even in our language, right? What's the word for even mental health illness? Like for us, you know, I would say in Wolof, you know, people who have suffered from mental illness are deemed crazy. There's a word called dof.
Yeah.
It means he's crazy.
Yeah.
So even in, I would say most languages, if people talk about most languages they speak in Africa and they thought of what's the word for mental illness or, you know, the different variations, depression or, you know, bipolar, all of those different forms. We don't even have it in our language, right? And to your question on what do you think, I mean, it's always multiple different reasons. I would say for me, and based on what I've read too as well, like the challenges of mental health in Africa, typically it's because of like 5 main reasons. And those are, firstly, you have to look at poverty. in West Africa. People are living in sheer poverty and don't understand the weight and toll that has on,
on your health, mental health.
Your mental health.
Okay.
We have, of course, civil wars and conflicts, tribal wars, and that has gone for decades, right? People never think of think of all decades countries that have been through civil wars, it could be a genocide or tribal wars or conflicts, dictators. That mental health of having just people that have lived like that in Africa under dictators, we don't talk about it.
Yep.
Lack of awareness, number 3, we don't talk about it. It's, like I said, usually not even a factor in most African communities, right?
Yep.
So I would say that's my number 3. And of course, resources, right? I was reading, they said that about 1% the amount of spend African countries spend on mental health, it's about 1% in most African countries of healthcare resources.
1% of healthcare resources.
1% of healthcare resources.
Wow.
In Africa, most African countries are spent on mental health.
Wow.
So just that lack of resources, right? Where you're going to have, doctors, to be able to assess people. And then I think I have one more, which is just other diseases and illnesses.
Taking precedent?
Yes.
Okay.
So malaria, HIV back then, cholera and all those other, that's just the priority.
So I think that was a good point you made with the last one. If so many things take precedent over mental health, right? How do you even start to sort of think about it as such a unnecessary?
Because it's a huge problem. It has Africa played. You can't tell me which African family who doesn't have their African family where someone has suffered some sort of, mental illness and it was completely dismissed. Oh, you're crazy. Or just, the religion aspect of things.
Religion is a big thing,
just,
you
seek to God.
Prayers. Yeah.
You need prayers. Yeah. Or in some African countries, or a lot, I would say in our Western region, sometimes forms of mental health, they're deemed as a form of possession or you're possessed or, you need traditional healing.
Yeah.
And there's no assessment of the fact that this person is suffering from either bipolar, could be having seizures and they're claiming that this person is possessed.
Could have depression, anything, anxiety.
Yeah, depression. Yeah.
And I think as the continent also speeds up its development, right? We're exposed to so much information, which I don't think humans are naturally designed for.
Yeah.
And all that information overload then conversely leads to mental health issues, right? I know in Uganda right now, it was never when I was growing up, we didn't talk about it.
No.
And if you did, it was they're crazy. So they went to...
They're crazy, yeah.
There's a place called Butabika, which is it's a psychiatric ward. And it's that was so stigmatized. If you had any sort of mental illness, and
they just send you to the just referred ward.
There, yeah. And then once you're in there, you're kind of regarded as
you're just off.
Yeah.
It's
you can't contribute to society anymore, basically.
I agree. And those psych wards were not a lot of them.
No.
I know in Gambia, although it's a small country, I only knew of one psych ward.
Yeah.
And
I only know of one.
If they send you to that psych ward, you were done out here. Yeah. It was oh, this person, is crazy guy, he's gone off script. And, these so-called crazy people that were suffering from mental illness, actually, they became infamous, at least. I don't know how it was in Uganda, but in Gambia, the people who had mental illness, we call them, there's this word called duff. They would roam around the streets, talk to themselves, sometimes not wear clothes, all over the place. People like us as kids growing up, we made fun of these people.
Yeah.
The adults said, oh, this guy, he's gone off script.
And it's if you don't focus on your school, you'll end up like them.
Stay away from drugs. You know what I'm saying? You end up like that. So, but dang, these people just roam the streets and everyone knew them. Oh, you go to this area, that's that one crazy person who roams around. You go to this area, that's that one person. And not once, if you mention yo, this person's actually suffering from severe mental illness.
Yeah.
He actually needs to be put in, like you said, the psych wards might be worse even, but
and I think
actual
naturally
care.
Because, like you said, they're so underfunded, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
1%.
think. Yeah, I don't think you can really have a dedicated sort of like team that provides the right care. You know, if they're not even if they don't have the right resources.
Fair enough.
But no, it's and it's not to say that mental health and mental illnesses are so extreme, right? I think it starts small and little by little, right? So the habits you form, good or bad, right, are going to ultimately shape the way you perceive your daily life, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about mental health too, of course, there's the extremities, but there's also the part where it's like you need to take care of your mental, like on the daily, right?
Yes, it's
just as much
practice.
as you go to the gym, you go to church, whatever sort of like bettering you're doing of yourself, think about your mental as well, right? Because I know a lot of our generation, especially millennials, Gen Z, we're more exposed to it, but I don't think we're exposed to how simple it could be, or not even simple, but how many resources we have to be able to take care of that mental health, right?
It was non-existent.
It was non-existent.
We were,
before.
Did I grow up seeing like the importance of, how to make sure you're checking your mental health, where you are, like how are you actually feeling? Are you up? Are you down? Who to talk to when those things that happen, Come on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we almost have to learn and find ways of how we can apply ourselves in terms of self-care and mental health. And
what are some things you think we could do different?
Well, the first thing we're doing right now is to talk about it.
Right?
I think we have to talk about what mental health looks for us too, growing up in our communities and what we saw, because the diagnosis is not the same, like I was saying.
For everyone, yeah.
For everyone, we could have, there are a lot of terms that we thought were normal, where they were forms of mental health. People who, growing up, we joke about sometimes, like, or we've all seen friends sometimes that their parents were really like physical towards them.
Exactly, yeah.
And we never, we just thought that's how it was, but
it was the norm for a lot of us.
It could be a parent, like in terms of going through either depression or some sort of mental illness, and they're using their own child as a coping or as a way of, releasing all of that.
And it turns into a cycle ultimately.
Yes, it's
because
a cycle, right?
The child repeats that behavior.
Exactly.
And I think, so for example, I have a family friend, right, who his dad, he was the firstborn, and he didn't turn out the way his dad wanted. Yeah. Which is his dad's dream. And so his dad used to beat him a lot. And anytime he would hear his name called in like an altered pitch, he would flinch because he would think it's his dad calling him to come and beat him. So there's those things that we sometimes joke about. Oh yeah, like I used to get beat, this, that, but like there's some deep shit to that.
And just the pressure sometimes. Yeah. You know what they say, like a lot of times your parents can, just growing up, parents or family, so many people, you can slip into a depression due to expectations, due to keeping the family's reputation for you to be perfect at your expense, you know? Right. Just the fact that we joke about the lawyer, doctor, engineers, expectation of our parents, you know how that can easily lead to someone into depression if they're not meeting their family standards, where it seems like it's not acceptable. Like these are all different things in our African communities that we need to evaluate and understand that if you interpret it in terms of mental health point of view, these are all forms, and what leads to depression, that leads to, we talk about having different personalities, bipolar, sometimes it's a joke when you're back home with your family versus when you're with your friend. Yeah.
Something to be said. Yeah.
Where do you think a lot of those comes from? Do we even know what ADHD is back home?
Right.
How many times we taking tests? This guy is you're so slow. You can't take tests. Yeah. You can't take exams. Stubborn. We joked about it. The teachers sometimes made fun of it. I have people growing up in classes, they could not take exams. They needed more time. Yeah. They couldn't concentrate. Yeah. And, I didn't even know, or we didn't know, we made fun of it. Who knows? That was probably ADHD.
And little like we didn't know. And the teachers themselves probably don't know. They don't know. So they're looking at it like, what's wrong
with this person? Everyone's taking the exam this set time. Why do you need more time?
Yeah. So it's something that I think we don't give it the light of day that it needs. And like just like you said, having conversations about it and like getting the ball rolling and just making sure more people are exposed to it. I think it's important, especially
it's imperative
with the sort of stigma like we were talking about around therapy.
Yes.
Back home.
That's one. Right? Yeah.
Very stigmatized and just...
What was your exposure to therapy, or you were growing up? What was your viewpoint of therapy?
Non-existent. And when I did get to learn about it, it was just like, oh, that's something you do when like either you've hit rock bottom.
Yeah, you've gone haywire.
Yeah, or script. You're just like everything's so far upside down that you can't even...
Was using a therapist even deemed as a solution back then? Because...
No.
It was not. Like, I never heard of the word go and sit and talk to a psychiatrist and help you deal with mental health. Never. Therapy, not even an option.
Because of the stigma around it. You know?
I mean, it could be a stigma. It could be one.
Yeah.
When you have religion and God,
that's one.
Which I understand that aspect. You know, that's how I lean to a lot of things. But still, like, it's dismissed. It's like, just go pray. Like, just go pray still. Like, you need someone to talk to as well. Even whether it's God, but you're still another human too. That
someone who's
that's
can bring a sense of comfort, right?
Just to dismiss and just say like, oh, just go pray and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all part of it, but you can't just deem that as the solution.
Yeah.
And then like I said, largely it was dismissed, or you're misguided. Or now you're starting to go a little bit crazy. It's now becoming a sense of, the supernatural. And it's now, let's go find the traditional old school ways of how we dealt with people who are suffering from supernatural kind of instances within their personality, but it's just mental illness.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that is still much the same, I hope that conversations like these can start to get the ball going.
I hope so, especially like for the young kids.
For the young kids, because I got a lot of hope in them. They're a good group.
Well, so what do you recommend though in terms of the awareness of one, stigma around therapy, stigma around how to identify the different forms of mental illness, be it depression, if you have ADHD, for example, in a community growing up or in most family structures where that is non-existent. So like, what would you recommend?
I mean, I don't know how much my recommendation would help because I'm not a psychologist.
Yes,
but I think that if there's anyone going through that, right, and they feel like they might be alone in that, I guess, say to them is, you're not alone, right? We all go through these things, and this is part of the reason why we had this episode was to let people know who are going through that like it's not just you, right?
Yeah.
There's resources out there, and all we're doing is trying to be a vessel to communicate to you all that everyone goes through it, and whatever box they try to put you in for it, don't pay that any mind, because it's something that we're all exposed to, right? So we'll just keep working on it together, and just reach out to us if you feel like you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree. Way too many of, way too many in our communities, back home and here, that the forms of mental health we go through is just a lot of trauma, a lot of, events from either childhood that you just keep and you just go on with your daily, but It's not right. You know, there are opportunities for you to reach out, you know, find those right professionals. We're not professionals, but we're telling you, hey, if you're going through this,
we'll at least try our best.
You know, and it's not only just because you're, you know, it's subjective to this is only what you're dealing with. Nah, a lot of people go through structures. That's why we're telling you, if you think you've seen it in your family, you know, we all have it. We've all experienced it. We've all seen it, you know. Now we're talking about it. That's the difference.
Yeah. How do you see, so conversely to that, right? Self-love.
Self-love
is a form of making yourself better, or is a form of practicing bettering your mental health, right?
Yes.
As Black men, right? How do you think we can practice self-love, and how do you practice self-love?
Oh, I mean, it's so important and such an underrated conversation in terms of what we don't think of. No, as Black men, I always look at like the perspective of, especially when you reach a level of awareness of how tough the world is for us as Black men, what we have to deal with. We have to work twice as hard to get half the credit. We already know this. And typically every time we go to work or we log on or when we go to supermarket, everywhere we go, there's the stigma and image around us that is a burden, and it's typically viewed negative, and you almost have to always make people feel comfortable around us.
Yeah, almost to like prove that
that we're not what that image is.
Yeah.
It's the burden of the Black man.
Yeah.
So it is important for you to prioritize self-love and self-care. And for me, how I look at it's not only gives me the confidence, it gives me a calm and peace that allows me to go to wherever I can go to, whichever setting or kind of, you know, work, anywhere I go to, I am sure of myself. And how I do that, like I said, is just to make sure you're, you know, prioritizing or having a positive influence around you. So whether it is friends, you know, having a positive influence around your family, your siblings, and understanding like your upbringing. For me, it's like understanding my roots, understanding what I'm about. So that allows you to have, for me, a core where that, for me, like no one can chat with me because I'm sure of, like, I know where I'm from. I know, like, where it's
like that. You need to understand where you're from to know where you're going.
Yeah, because that's where it comes from. Vulnerabilities or people questioning, like us Black men, are, you know, Blackness, and for you to now start suppressing, like we mentioned before, parts of yourself. I think that it's a largely comes from not knowing where you're from and who you are.
Yeah.
So for me, like, that is so important. I was lucky enough to have siblings and, you know, grew up in a family environment where that was so sure of. It allows me to kind of stay level in that aspect. But then there are certain parts of self-love, like I mentioned, is taking care of yourself, right? You know, every day, setting up a routine. Like you know me, I'm very routine oriented. Yeah. So making sure you have balance you do things in a repetitive motion. Because for me, that allows discipline, that allows consistency. And sometimes it can come to you not as rigid, but it allows you to be really disciplined in ensuring that you're prioritizing things you do in your routine for yourself. Like, you know, making sure you're working out at a certain time, making sure you're eating healthy, you know, making sure you're calling loved ones, you know, and intention of that is not just saying that, oh, I should do it, but like actually planning to do those things. And now hitting it in a routine. So those are things I would say I do.
Heavy on the discipline too.
How about you though?
Because I read a quote about discipline, and I think it was like the ultimate form of freedom is discipline, something like that. But heavy on that, because if you don't have discipline, you become a liability.
Yeah.
And once you're a liability, and that's when, like, I feel like a lot of things become amplified. In your life,
of course.
Right? I don't like to use the word outlet, because outlet feels like you're running away from something. But find something that, like, genuinely makes you happy, right?
Yeah.
So like us, we go play football, like we go karting, right? Yeah. We go just chill at the crib, play FIFA. There's all these things that are pleasing, right? and find something that fulfills you in a different manner, right? So it doesn't have to make you happy, but maybe it's like, oh, I went and helped this person out and I learned a lesson from them, right? I sat and listened to this story and I learned from them. It's a form of like humility, because you're humbling yourself and saying, okay, I'm confident in myself, but I also want to grow myself.
100%.
And I find that if you're trying to balance or have balance in your life, that sort of self-love just starts to just percolate through, right?
Facts.
And then a big one is, like you said, just block out the noise, right? If you're sure of yourself, like, the rest is just noise,
it's
right?
Noise,
I don't know if you've seen the TikTok that's been going around of like black men frolicking through through the park, right?
Yeah.
You've seen that,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen it. Yeah.
We're doing that all summer because like I just want to be happy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to like keep up this image of like, oh, like tough, strong black man.
No, we
like,
can't.
Yeah,
No.
cool. We can be all that, but we can be everything else as well, right?
Facts.
So this summer, we're wearing hoochie shorts. We're frolicking through the parks. We're just being black men.
Black boy joy. You know what I'm saying?
Black boy joy.
Embrace that. Embrace that. Embrace that. Don't live other people's expectations.
Yeah.
Don't live for that.
Yeah.
And I thanks for sharing that, because I agree with it 100%. It's so important. Finding your source of happiness, finding that balance. Humility is huge. It's a huge point, because for us, like I always say, it's a fine line between, when you're confident and being deemed arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also mentioned, as black men, it's important for us to be confident, but with a level of, humility.
Yeah.
And not be, shown as arrogance.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's so important. Self-love, taking care of yourself as black men, is so important.
Yeah, 100%. And I wish that this conversation doesn't stop here for the people listening, right?
No, it's just to think about it, again. And that's why we talk about it. And we, largely, Ivan, like us, the boys, this is never usually our conversations, It's FIFA, football, sports, lifestyle, music and stuff. But hey, man, so what do you do for self-care today? Or, hey, let's go do something for ourselves, We can go get mani-pedi or something like that,
Yeah, exactly.
Like stuff like that is self-care. Come on. We usually don't do it. And like even us, like we should start taking more initiative towards also like the time we spend, things we do towards growing. That involves also an aspect of how do we, increase self-care, self-love, and just appreciating each other. Yeah,
100%. And just, again, destigmatizing all the things that are completely backwards about mental health, right?
Yeah.
Therapy, if you feel like you need therapy, 100% go do it. That's just like going to the gym for your brain.
Facts.
Right?
Yeah.
Learning about the different kinds of like maybe mental illnesses or cognitive biases and whatever it may be. Just learn about all those. I guess just learning never stops, right? And just continuing to build on yourself, I think is ultimately the biggest thing in taking care of your mental. Right?
It's a must. We had to touch on this. It's very important. I know people enjoy the fun segments, but this is like such an important conversation. I feel like that is so many times sleep on the rug. And even when we mention it, like, when I think about it, I'm like, dang, like, we have still a long way to go from an African community in terms of mental health, mental illnesses, creating, really positive environments. And I'm sure there are a lot of, families and environments like that, but it is in the minority. So, for anyone who listens to us, think about, in how you grew up, things that you saw or what you're going through, and take action if you can.
100%.
Because you're not alone. Like, we all go through it.
100%. But yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure having you, as always.
We promise we'll be fun next time.
We'll be fun next time, but sometimes we need to get stuff like this.
Facts. This is so important.
And there, it's super important.
Yeah.
Couple big announcements we might have coming up soon.
Yes.
Stay tuned. But until then, I'm your boy DJ Anzo, your Young Money Millionaire Uncle E, and we're signing out. Y'all have a blessed summer and stay hot.
Take care of your mentals.